Over to you, Vijayji.
Namaskar. This is Vijay Rana from London. And let me start today's program with some personal anecdotes. I was working with the BBC Hindi service in Bush House, London. And we have our guest, Ram Yechury, who was the leader of CPIM in those days, and he still is. In my interview, Ram Yechury candidly said that the aim of the Mandal Commission report that was announced by the government to the VP Singh was to defeat the politics of temple. He was very candid and honest about it. And then a few years later, I interviewed Prime Minister, the ex-Prime Minister VP Singh. He was admitted in those days in Apollo Hospital. And I went there to do an interview with him. And he also confirmed that we wanted that the politics of temple should not win. That's why we implemented the Mandal Commission report. He admitted in that interview. And he said to me, I vividly remember that I have changed the grammar of the Indian politics. That communalism, as he used to say, because the temple movement in those days was branded with communalism, and he said, will never be successful in my country. That was his resolve. Now, see what a day has arrived. We have been waiting for this moment for almost 500 years, and it's just 3 days away. In his lifetime, Lord Ram was exiled only for 14 years. But then he was exiled from Ayodhya, his own city, by a foreign invader called Babur and his commander Mir Baqi in 1528. So Lord Ram is returning back to his city exactly after 496 years. The moment has arrived. This is a turning point in our civilizational history, and I'm noticing a very significant national mood swing. What I'm going to say now has been ignored by many political observers. Despite some discordant notes, this Pran Pratishtha festival has been a very inclusive movement. The rich and the poor, those living in remote villages and metropolitan cities are participating in large numbers in this movement. All the castes, communities, upper caste, the OBCs, Dalits, tribals, and even Muslims in increasing number have been participating and supporting the building of Ram Temple in Ayodhya. I'm sure many of you must have seen Iqbal Ansari, the man who fought all his life the case of Ram Janmabhoomi case, and who fought that in his throughout his life against the building of temple in Ayodhya. He was so hearteningly standing on the street of Ayodhya and showering rose petals when our Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently visited Ayodhya. Ladies and gentlemen, India is changing. India is sitting on a threshold of national reconciliation. To discuss this historical and civilizational moment of great significance, we have two speakers today. With us, Guru Prakash Paswan and Sudarshan Rambhadran. Let me introduce them to you. Guru Prakash Paswan is the national spokesperson of Bharatiya Janata Party and assistant professor of law at the Patna University. He has been instrumental with the Dalit Chamber of Commerce and Industry since 2015. And he has been a national youth coordinator of his party. His column keeps on appearing on Dalit issues as well as on the issues of national importance in the Indian Express and the print quite regularly. And I've been a regular reader of his articles. He has co-authored a very interesting book called Makers of Modern Dalit History with our other guest today, Sudarshan Rambhadran, who also joins us today from Chennai. He's an author and columnist. He has over 9 years of work experience in the field of policy research, communications, and journalism. He has completed a term as a professional fellow for governance and society in the South and Central Asia program in Washington, D.C., a professional exchange program run by the US Department of State. As I said earlier, he is the co-author of the book Makers of Modern Dalit History. Guru Prakash Paswan and Sudarshan Rambhadran, welcome to the program, and may I invite you to present your lecture today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, respected Vijay Rana ji, our friends from DC, Maduresh ji, and other team members I can see who have joined us for this conversation. So, the idea of this conversation was sort of initiated by one of the recent articles that appeared in the Indian Express, which was written by Sudarshan Ramabhadranji and myself, on how the consecration ceremony, the Pran Pratishtha ceremony, is not a majoritarian message, but in a sense, it's a quest to our civilizational consciousness. And Maduresh ji and I, we have been in constant touch. He reached out and sort of asked us to have a discussion on this very important, very timely, and a very significant subject. I'm very persuaded and intrigued by the initial observations of Vijayji, who has recalled his very interesting conversation with Sitaram Yechuri, who said that in a way, Mandal politics was a response to the often used Kamandal politics, and how this has seen a great amount of resonance both in India and in the West as well. So, we have prepared a small PPT presentation, Ram in all, for all. Ram sab mein hai, sabke Ram, through which we are going to sort of give you a glimpse into what exactly is the atmosphere now. And as very beautifully put forward by respected Vijayji, that this is a culmination of a journey of more than 500 years. How the civilizational existential crisis kept coming, but the strength of the Indian character, the unity, the oneness has kept us alive. As we all know that for the first time in our history, for our existence, we are witnessing a very remarkable transformation. The birth of our country in 1947, and not exactly as a typical nation state like, for instance, Singapore or other countries, but as a civilizational state. And again, I'm intrigued by the initial observations of Vijayji when he said communalism and secularism. So, when we translate the concept of secularism, there is a huge debate. There are multiple judicial pronouncements, Supreme Court cases on what is secularism. Is it Panth Nirpeksh or Dharm Nirpeksh? Dharma is not religion. Many philosophers have argued it before us as well. And the institution that represents our constitution, for instance, the Speaker of Lok Sabha, behind the chair of the Speaker of Lok Sabha, you see a slogan called Dharm Chakra Paravartanai. Similarly, the Supreme Court of India has a slogan of Yato Dharmasto Vijaya. Jahan dharm hoti hai, wahan vijay hota hai. So, are we Dharm Nirpeksh or are we Panth Nirpeksh? This has been an existential question for almost last 7 decades. All of us are remembering the 1951 consecration ceremony at Somnath as well, and how there were disagreements between the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and the then President Dr. Rajendra Prasad. It is an excellent exchange of letters, and I would request if we can go through it to sort of inform ourselves on what has been the confluence of religion and politics. And in my limited sense, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi first who tried the experiment of mixing religion and politics. So, in a way, the discussion in India has been very culturally and civilizationally charged. Can we go to the previous slide? We have some clear policy goals in alignment with the UN SDGs. We have seen how multiple initiatives like the global leadership of India in terms of International Solar Alliance, how climate inclusive development, representation, and social justice has been at the core of our foreign policy as well. In terms of people's participation, you see how a section of our political establishment and a section of our intelligentsia has been always pitting Mandal against Kamandal. But this civilizational project of Shri Ram Janmabhoomi has been the most inclusive project in the history of the humankind. We have a permanent position of a member from Dalit community in the Shri Ram Janmabhoomi Teerth Kshetra Nyas. When the Shilanyas was being undertaken, usually in a Shilanyas there are 4 bricks that are laid down. The Shilanyas also we had a Dalit person, Mr. Kameshwar Chaupal, as one of the person who performed the Shilanyas. And Mr. Kameshwar Chaupal is also the permanent representative from the Dalit community in the Shri Ram Janmabhoomi Teerth Kshetra Nyas. That is a modern example. But it is very important for us to realize that Ram itself, Ramayana itself, is a symbol of inclusion. Is it possible for us to imagine Ram without Mata Shabri? Is it possible for us to imagine Ram without the contributions of Kevat Nishad? Maharishi Valmiki, in the modern parlance, to which caste did he belong? The author of Mahabharata, in the modern parlance, to which caste did he belong? So there have been a section of the Indian political establishment who have survived, thrived, and flourished on doing politics in the name of fault lines. Caste undeniably is one of the very important civilizational fault line. There is no denialism of it. But that does not define our culture, that does not define our civilization. We have seen over the last 10 years, globally also, how, especially in terms of the COVID diplomacy, the presence of India as a bulwark, how I recall the conversations of our foreign minister with the Jamaican foreign minister. Our foreign minister said that at the UNGA, when the Jamaican foreign minister came forward to our foreign minister, the Jamaican foreign minister said to the Indian foreign minister that I carry the COVID vaccine in my heart. How we became the global pharmacy from providing hydroxychloroquine to basic things like paracetamol. We ensured that 120 crore doses is provided free of cost to the entire population, not only in India, but also in the third world country. So the idea of development, the idea of civilization cannot be divorced with the present and the contemporary parlance of the Indian trajectory as well. We are culturally rooted, we are civilizationally rooted, but we are looking forward. We have become the 5th largest economy. We are targeting to become the three powerful economies in the world in the next couple of years. All the data from IMF to the World Bank suggest that there is a steep decline in poverty as well. So, inclusivity, cultural rootedness, civilizational oneness has been the three core principles of the Indian story since the last 10 years. Can we go to the next slide, please? In a sense, it has been an exercise in the project of decolonization of the Indian mind as well. How a certain section of our intelligentsia has covered history, how our generation, the generation to which I and Sudarshanji belong, our NCRT books, had a very lopsided and a biased understanding of our history. Even today, for that matter, even today, that has been a hugely contested area. We study, there is a great amount of focus on medieval history, little amount of focus on modern history. But ancient Indian history is something which is not sufficiently covered. So, an exercise in the decolonization of the Indian mind is also very critical. I recall one of the op-eds by a newspaper in the UK, The Guardian, May 2014. It categorically said that 26th May 2014, the day when Prime Minister Modi took oath, is the day when the British finally left India. So, in a sense, from 1947 to 2014, there were some vestiges of the British colonial establishment in our intelligentsia, in our political establishment as well. The establishment of Sengol, for that matter, in the new parliament building, is something which is deeply representative of our civilizational ethos. It is not just a temple, but it is an emotion, not only in the north of India, not only in the south of India, but more than 110 crore Hindus across the world, they are celebrating this. If we look at it historically and structurally as well, there are allegations on us that we are exclusivist, we are supremacist, and obviously there is a version of history that advocates and support this position and proposition. But on the contrary, I gave you the example of Maharshi Valmiki, Maharshi Vedvyas. Dr. Ambedkar himself was greatly inspired by Ramanujacharya. Even today, even today, when we look at examples from Chhattisgarh for that matter, there is a community called the Ram Nami community. And how Ram Nami community, when initially they were denied entry into the temples, they inscribed the tattoo of the name of Ram all across their body. In a sense that their commitment, their devotion to Ram cannot be limited to any physical realization. So, on the one hand, we are rooted, but on the other hand, we are also on the way which the Honorable Prime Minister has spoken on multiple occasions of realizing and achieving our dream of the developed country. But being aptly and sufficiently rooted with our civilizational ethos. And we go to the next slide.
MAN $2.
Decolonizing Indians to India, a 500-year battle for Ram Temple resolved peacefully through India's Supreme Court. Ours is a country which is the largest democracy. And to us, we are also the mother of democracy. I am live from Patna.
Small s.
And only
$2.
45 minutes away from Patna, there is a place called Vaishali, where the idea of consensus building, collective decision making germinated and originated in the Lakshmi dynasty. So when we call ourselves mother of democracy, again I would like to go back to Dr. Ambedkar, who said that Referring to Europeans, he said that when we were
Seven,
living
seven.
in caves, we had the institution of Sabha and Samitis. So the point behind mentioning all this is that the process of January 22nd has been an evolutionary legal judicial process following the rule of law. It was thoroughly and intensely argued from the civil court to Allahabad High Court and eventually in the Supreme Court as well. So it is very important for us to realize that when there are allegations on us that it is majority and it is one sided, it is not giving value to the other side, we have to put it forward that it is legal, it is judicial, and it has been performed within the four walls, within the framework of the Constitution. Today, we are witnessing a very polarized political atmosphere as well. On the one hand, you have people who have called for the total eradication of Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma ka samool nash. There are conferences being held. Time and again, there are allegations of Hinduism being exclusionary, exclusive, supremacist. There have been challenges, but at the same time, the inclusivity and the oneness and the unity is something that has remained unchanged. Whether it will have political ramifications or not is a question for the future. But today, the sheer energy, the sheer enthusiasm, उत्सव के वातावरण से जो ऊर्जा और उत्साह का माहौल बना है, that is unmatched, that is unparalleled across caste and creed. We have written exhaustively about it. The subaltern sections, the backward and the marginalized sections, they've come forward. You look at Kanwad Yatra, you look at the Chhat Parv, our festivals do not discriminate. So, in a sense, this is an epochal movement that has brought all of us together. Can we go to the next slide? Bhagwan Ram has been incredibly relational. In a sense, if you recall, I was reading a very interesting essay this morning that said that Ram व्यवस्था के विस्थापितों के साथ है, राम कमजोर के साथ, राम वनवासियों के साथ है, राम दीपक स्वयं के लिए नहीं जलाते हैं, राम स्वयं दीपक की श्रृंखला बनते हैं. मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम or the personification in our everyday lives. We have listened to Kumar Vishwas and other Kathavachaks as well, Murari Bapu. And even without them, the daily lives, it is so deeply and greatly influenced, which cannot be described in words. Why does he inspire you to understand that being anchored in dharma, one's duty has defined his life, his vision, and his mission? To say in excitement, and when the Honorable Prime Minister said he was hitting at the right chord, Ram Sabke, Ram cannot be defined by a set of ideas, by a set of people following a particular faith. It is a reflection, is a thought, is an emotion, which today is fortunately visible on the Indian streets as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Internationally, we see the last words of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation. Hey Ram. And when the self declared followers of Mahatma Gandhi questioned the existence of Ram in 2007 in the Supreme Court of India, that shows the level of hypocrisy, that shows the level of dual standards. When the grand old party tried to politicize it, and again, going back to the conversation on secularism and communalism, it sorts of sets a very disturbing trend that for a very long period of time, we are all aware that how it was politicized. I was going through a book recently by senior journalist Nirja Chaudhary, and there it has been categorically mentioned that during the aftermath of Shah Bano verdict, just to gain political advantage, just to gain some brownie points with the Hindus, it was the Rajiv Gandhi government that opened the doors. So for them, for the ruling establishment for long in this country, we saw how it was an instrument or a vehicle of politics, and how in your face it becomes when in 2007 the sitting Prime Minister of India Manmohan Singh says that the first right over the resources of this country is of the minorities and particularly the Muslim minorities. So the politics has been very complicated and has had a very major implications in terms of our thinking as well. But regardless of it, what has remained is the strength of the national character. Internationally, we know how President Obama said that he carries Hanuman Chalisa. We know how the Prime Minister Sunak addresses, and when he says Jai Siya Ram, we are aware of the contributions of Indonesian people. And the ballet on Ram is conducted in a Muslim majority country like Indonesia in the month of Ramzan. They fast and do the Ram ballet. So that, in a sense, tells us, shows us the sheer diversity and the sheer level of acceptance of Ram globally. Can we go to the next slide? So, we have mentioned it in our article as well that anything which is open to criticism and question, how the examples of Kevat Nishad Raj, Mata Shabri, Maharishi Valmiki, Maharishi Vedvyas, Kameshwar Chopal, Ramnami Samaj is a reflection of our commitment to inclusion. Today there is a conversation around DEI in the West. But DEI has been part of our personality since very long. We don't need a particular terminology for it. It's a bridge for all regions of Bharat, not just to inculcate values, but live the values. It's not abstract, but a moment to which we as generation are privileged and fortunate to witness it. And all of us across the world are eagerly and excitedly looking forward to it. For the rest of the slide, I would request my friend Sudarshanji to take it ahead. Sudarshanji, over to you.
Thanks so much, Guru Prakash ji, for setting the tone, putting into context what Ram appeals for to our country and countrymen. In fact, I am joining from the south of India. The south of India is especially considered the sacred geography of India, owing to the fact that we maintain and archived our culture, religion, literature, at all. And there's palpable excitement today, as Mr. Vijay said in the beginning. Every house we hear is sort of getting ready for Jan 22nd. And my father's name is Ramabhadran itself. So it's a synonym for Bhagwan Ram. So it's truly an emotional moment for those who have observed civilizational history. Moving ahead, please. Next slide. So Guru pointed out when we were researching for our book as well, one of the historical characters that we wanted to document in our book, Makers of Modern Dalit History, was Sage Valmiki. Babasaheb Ambedkar is on record to state how when Hindus, when they wanted a Ramayana, they went to a non-upper caste Hindu, that was Sage Valmiki. When they wanted a Mahabharat, they went to someone from the subaltern community, which was Sage Vedavyas. And when they wanted the constitution, they have come to me. So these three documents are very, very integral to India, the civilizational nation state. And it's a fascinating incident in history as to how Ratnakar, uh, as a dacoit, was transformed to Sage Valmiki through Sage Narada in a beautiful dialogue where Sage Valmiki even questions Sage Narada, can you tell me who that ideal man is, who can speak well, who can present himself well, who's objective, who's a real man to look up to? That is when says Narad says, it's very difficult to find, but there is one who belongs to the Ikshvaku lineage, and that is Ram. Like Guru said, it's incomplete to actually remember Ramayana without Shabari and Guha. He's explained it, so I'm not going into the details. Next slide, please. This is a fascinating community. He partly alluded to it. They were actually socially stigmatized and not allowed to enter temples in Chhattisgarh. They belong to the subaltern community, but instead they said, why do we need to go to a temple when we ourselves can adorn Ram in our bodies? That is when they started tattooing themselves with Ram, 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 Ram. And till date, ladies and gentlemen, and I would strongly encourage people from London, whenever they visit India, to sort of visit Chhattisgarh as well and probably undertake some studies on this community. They have a copy of Ramcharit Manas and they are truly well versed in the Ram Katha. And they were founded by Parashuram. Parashuram had a difficult start to his life, but owing to some miraculous experiences that he has had, was able to transform, and as a result, the Ramnami community came into being. Next slide, please. Friends, this is very important. Culture, connectivity, and commerce are three important pillars for India today when it comes to India's foreign policy. Today, Ram and Ramayan are shared so far with so many countries. Just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Honorable Prime Minister has released postage stamps for various countries that mark and remember Ram and Ramayana. This is also ensured that India cares for the deprived. If you notice, rather observe Ramayana very intricately, you will see how Ram really empathized with the deprived. Today, you can see India empathizing with the lesser developed, with the deprived in the global south countries. Ram never made it about himself in the Ramayana, although he's a central character. There's so many characters in Ramayana to be studied and observed, but he made sure others matter. The story of Shabari, the story of Vibhishan, the story of Angad, how he represents, in fact, our current foreign minister alludes to Angad as one of India's foremost diplomats along with Hanuman. So Ram ensured others matter. And today in foreign policy, India is making it not just about herself, but with the firm message of Vishwamitra, that is, friend of all, others matter. Ram formed pragmatic alliances with Sugriva through Hanuman. Ram listened carefully, be it Kaikeyi, be it Dasharath, be it Sita, be it Lakshman, be it even Ravan. Ram was an excellent listener, and you can see today how uh, India is listening to countries, an important trait in global communication. As a result, we saw the African Union, after these many years, being incorporated into the high table of G20. Ram's communication skill, you can see today how swiftly our Ministry of External Affairs apparatus responds, be it domestic or international. And last evaluation, whatever move Ram was making, be it in the Vanvas period, during the battle, there was objective evaluation. And today you can see India's foreign policy apparatus consistently evaluating as we move towards 2047. Progressing, please. Next slide. Like Guru said, this is the Prambanan temple, as you all can see. That is where this Ramayana ballet is performed. And all these dancers, they perform the ballet while they are fasting for Ramzan. In fact, it was in the year 1962 that Indonesia first released stamps based on Ramayana. Of course, there is a great expanse in Southeast Asia today. The point is how they have taken to Hindu thought as their own culture despite being a Muslim majority. Prime Minister Modi and Joko Widodo have taken part in kite festivals that was themed around Ramayana. Joko Widodo has given figurines of Ramayana to world leaders. Sukarno, all of you must be aware how fascinated he was with Ramayana. Indonesia is a case study in itself that proves how, uh, despite being this Muslim majority country, they said Hindu, we are Hindu culturally. Moving ahead. Many critics say today that Ram was not right. Um, what he did in certain instances was not right, and that we have brought out in our presentation, where he was never above questions or criticism. But what we would urge listeners to look at is what was his ideal? His ideal, the motivation was the ideal in being objective. In 21st century, being objective is doing what is right and refraining from doing anything that is wrong. And if you look at the life story of Bhagwan Ram, you'll immediately infer that what he was doing was objective in his assessment, and therefore he went about doing that. And this is a great contemporary lesson for all of us. It's not just about Bharat, it's about not just about United Kingdom, it's about the world. In order to tackle challenges, how objective we have to be. Next slide, please. Friends, Ayodhya as a place, rather, Ayodhya as a term means a place where there is no conflict. The temple that is come up, the occasion for which we are waiting with bated breath, Jan 22nd, symbolizes the syncretic nature of Bharat. For 500 years, there was a battle between scientific evidence and narrative evidence. That's important. Europeans, people from United Kingdom, Many Europeans have documented how Hindus believed, went worshipping there for Ramanavami, and thus was the significance of the Ram Mandir there. And all these 500 years, all of them, that's why we particularly highlighted people's participation. People have been resilient to ensure that we write our civilizational history. Somnath is a great example, which was destructed, brought back in full glory. And in all this, friends, there's not been violence. Rule of law has prevailed. Being the majority community, Hindus were very clear that we cannot bypass rule of law. We believe, we have faith in the Supreme Court, and the judgment is there for all of you to read. It's a fascinating judgment that gives important credence to Ram Temple. And if you read, there's a lot of documents that is available on the history of the Ram Temple movement. You will notice that Hindus have never surrendered the site. And thus, it has transformed into a people's movement until now. And not just this, the judgment clearly says how 5 acres of land ought to be allotted, which is allotted, for building a mosque for the Muslim community. So please understand how this important aspect of lawmaking body, ensured that nobody is hurt, ensured that everyone is taken along in the civilizational journey. Next slide, please. Friends, the Archaeological Survey of India played a very, very important role. They, in fact, trumped non-archaeological historians. The narrative evidence that was coming out was through non-archaeological historians, people who have never visited, people who have no faith, people who are willing to concede that this was just myth. There is no fact to this history. When the ASI was brought in, they stuck to evidence-based findings. Several findings have been conducted, several excavations have been done. You will see a lot of interviews of these excavators, namely Sri K.K. Mohammed, who's been awarded the Padma Shri by the government of India. There was so much clarity on bringing out the evidence base for the temple at Ayodhya. And the inference is very clear that that particular site was not used for any habitational purposes at all. In fact, Mr. Mohammed is on record, Mr. K.K. Mohammed is on record to say that how Ayodhya is akin to Mecca and Medina for Muslims, and therefore, temple is very, very critical. Please hand over. In the 1980s, in the 1990s, there just prior to the movement, there were a lot of Muslims, and I'm not saying this; it's all on public domain, who were for handing over of the mosque and the temple to come up. And like Guru alluded, it is the politics, and I think Mr. Vijay also alluded in the beginning. It is the politics that unfortunately infected the atmosphere. However, like we mentioned, we are trying to right this civilizational wrong and take everyone along, not just of one community, not just of one religion, because like we said, Ram is in all, Ram is for all. Next. Today, what's the mood? I just gave you a sense of how there is uh, palpable excitement, but we are aware that as a country, we face a lot of challenges. India faces a lot of challenges. Uh, in the road to 2047, when India will celebrate 100 years of independence, we want to ensure we contemporize Ram. Let us take climate change, for example. There was a moment when Ram lost all confidence and not willing to fight Ravan. At that moment, a terrific sage from South India, sage Agastya, comes to inspire Ram and gives him the Aditya Hridayam, which so many households chant today, and inspired him to worship the sun. And that's how anchored we have been with nature. Today, India is looking to contemporize Ram to see if we can tackle challenges like climate change that confront humanity and ensure a thorough job of eliminating this challenge so that peace and prosperity can prevail. There is a moment of jubilation, but we also know this is a moment of healing. The civilizational nation state of Bharat is healing as a result of the Supreme Court verdict and finally the building of the temple. This is true secularism, where each one has a right to pray, not just one or a few communities. We'd like now for all of you to have a look at a video by Pujya Swami Chinmayanandji, our inspiration. He was also the inspiration for the VHP. He's also the founder of the Chinmaya mission. And that video alludes to uh, the present day context. He had such foresight as to why Ram Temple is important. And I would request Mr. Maduresh to sort of show you all this video so that you hear it from the master. With that, we'll close. After the video, we'll be open to your questions.
This wonderful problem of India. The Hindus and Muslims are fighting. For what? Rama Janmabhoomi. Is it really speaking a quarrel between Hindus and Muslims? Have you looked at the problem properly? Rama Janmabhoomi, Krishna Janmabhoomi, Kashi, the most historical thing. Mohenjo-daro days onwards is Kashi important. All right. All those places, they built a mosque, that the temple is in the lap of the mosque. This is not mosque for prayer. They were all victory monuments. Now the younger generation of Muslims.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maduresh ji, for that. Over to Mr. Vijay, and we can take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Guru Prakash ji, and thank you, Sudarshan ji. It's a very, very interesting presentation, and it opens many questions. And I'm glad that you emphasize the inclusivity, the idea of inclusivity. My question is to Guru Prakash ji. Guru Prakash ji, this whole idea of inclusivity, why it has escaped the larger public discourse? Have we not been able to make it as a dominant point of Ram Janmabhoomi movement?
Vijayji, I think that's a very important question, and to answer it very strategically, I think yes and no. It's very important because, like I said in during the course of my presentation as well, that DEI might have become a phenomenon now in the West, but it has been a part of our tradition, a part of our behavior since a very long period of time. But in particularly with respect to Ram Janmabhoomi, you see, or Ram Mandir movement and inclusivity, it could be a very interesting area of research that you're proposing. But somehow I think the very conscious inclusion of someone like Mr. Kameshwar Chaupal, and not only in the trust but also during the Shilanyas, the key Shilanyas that happened 30 years ago, that in a way shows our commitment, and it's a reflection of our ethos that has been inclusive. And I am very surprised because I did a tour of US in 2022. I came to UK in 2023, and very like flawed, baseless, illogical arguments that India is now exclusive, India is a space for exclusion. And to many, it was a sort of information, a sort of renaissance that even the Prime Minister of India is not an upper caste, he belongs to an extremely backward class community. For the first time in the history, we are witnessing a woman from tribal community at the highest constitutional office in the country. So, in a way, it needs to be articulated well. Yes. Have we articulated? We have been, yes, but I agree with you when you say that we need more literature, more articulation, and more publication on how inclusivity has been one of the very core and essential features of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement.
And one of the side question, related question is that there's been very, very powerful and vocal forces, not only in India, but also outside India, which have almost created an impression that this is the end of secularism in India, this is the end of democracy in India, and India is going to become a Hindu Rashtra, in which the position of minorities will be really, really in peril. So this, how to counteract this impression? Because in the West, there are lots of people who are in universities, in major media outlets. This impression is being, trusted in a very big way. What can we do about it?
No, I agree. I agree with you when you say that this impression or this false narrative is being built. But if you look at a very elementary reading of data, Vijayji tells us that more than 40% more Muslim women are going to schools and colleges now. For the first time, we are witnessing conversations on the marginalized among the Muslims as well. You would have seen how Prime Minister Modi has spoken about representation of Pasmanda communities, that how we need more and more Pasmanda communities in Uttar Pradesh for that matter. Like coming back to your previous question. So in Uttar Pradesh, the way the academic articulation of Uttar Pradesh is such that a person wearing saffron robe is the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, but they consciously ignore the fact that for the first time in the history of Uttar Pradesh, we have a Pasmanda Muslim as a cabinet minister, a young Pasmanda Muslim. We have three Dalit women as member of the Council of Ministers in Uttar Pradesh for the first time. So, in a way, secularism, like I said, in education, in political representation, for the first time after the abrogation of Article 370, we have a Pasmanda Muslim in the history of our country. Can you imagine a Pasmanda Muslim from Jammu Kashmir as a member of Rajya Sabha? So, absolutely, that there was nothing. And for a very large period of time, secularism, like I said, has been very selective, has been very feudalistic, and only a particular section of Muslim fundamentalist and radical they have benefited from this idea of secularism. This idea of secularism never ever benefited the disadvantaged, the dispossessed, and the marginalized among the Muslims as well. The idea of democracy being under threat, I think, as a largest democracy, the most critical of the VDEM report. So the VDEM report that came out last year, that termed as electoral autocracy, it was the most critical report. But when it came to electoral processes, they could not challenge us. Even in terms of electoral processes, they said that Indian have the best practices. You see the opposition in India as they keep questioning EVMs, but at the same time, they're also boasting the fact that in the recent state elections in Madhya Pradesh, they got 40% votes. So that is something which is a topic of internal discussion, but the concerns of Western universities are somehow misplaced and are not logically analyzed well and have no semblance to the reality here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that one point, Vijay sir. One is some of these commentators must visit Bharat and experience. We just had Pongal in South India, and the bull taming sport Jallikattu is very, very famous, as you would know. Now, in villages, let us say in Madurai, there is a village which I have visited, and there is a lot of Hindu-related practices that is connected to this sport. So, there is one Hindu practice which a Muslim starts off in this village, and only then the bull taming sport takes place in that village. Till date, that practice is continued. Nobody objects. Second, the respect, the command and respect that Dr. Abdul Kalam, the respect that Dr. Abdul Kalam commands in India today, there's no match. Came from the fisherman community, took ISRO to heights, took our nation, gave our youngsters a vision in 2020, gave us, points to ponder on how to take our country forward. The very man who excavated for Ayodhya Ram Mandir, Mr. K.K. Mohammed,
Yes.
he too is a Muslim. Right. There was a debate on Citizenship Amendment Act. Please show us one Muslim who has been discarded of his citizenship in India till this very date, or a Christian. Absolutely not. We have lived perennially in this syncretic culture. We will live. Maybe the name of Bharat or India may change maybe 5,000 years from now, but it is in our DNA to faithfully live together.
Sudarshan, while you are there, can you just highlight more about this Ramnami community? In which district of Chhattisgarh they are found?
They are found in several districts of Chhattisgarh today. Parashuram had leprosy, and then there was a miraculous experience one night he had, after which he transformed several members, and they started flocking to him. As a result, they were also, like we said, be objective. What is right, what is wrong. There's no denying that they were not given entry to temples in Chhattisgarh. As a result, they started tattooing themselves with Ram Ram. I would certainly recommend a book wrapped in the name by Professor Ramdas Lam. He is a professor of religion in Hawaii University who has lived within these communities and brought out a comprehensive study of how they came about and what is their devotion to Ramcharitmanas, how they are well versed in Ram Katha today. Besides this, filmmaker Bharat Bala has brought out a wonderful short film just for about 10 minutes. Those who have no interest to sort of read the book can watch this movie on Ramnami in his channel called Virtual Bharat. This will give you a panoramic view of this inspiring community.
Interesting. And my question to both of you, you both said cultural connectivity and commerce. We have seen the transformation of Varanasi, 129 million visitors in 2 years. And Ayodhya has been, transformed in a huge way. So, can you tell me what kind of this new cultural exploration of India, what kind of opportunities it can bring to local communities and the people living in those areas? Economic benefits.
Sudarshanji will go first.
Yeah, can you come again, sir, on that? How
My
is
question is, yes, yes, there's a great civilizational revival is happening, but it's also bringing economic benefits to the local communities. We have seen this in Varanasi, how Ayodhya is being transformed because of this great rejuvenation.
Yeah, before that, I just got out this line that Professor Ramdas Lam writes on the Ramnamati. The words are the set is also a vibrant example of what has been an integral part of the ever changing Ram tradition in India. Its inception to the present, the involvement and influence of those on the social and religious periphery in the Ram Bhakti in India. Such a insane few lines from the book and their deep admiration for Ramcharitma. See, on Ayodhya, I think we've had our the first international airport that's been inaugurated. The railway station and the infrastructure has been refurbished. See, I have been to Ayodhya when Ram Lalla was in the bamboo tent. From then to now, as a child, our parents ensured that we go there. And just recently, the last Kumbh which Uttar Pradesh hosted, I was there. It was like an internment camp, right?
Yeah.
So much security and go there and do. But now that the temple is there, some targets that we have been listening is 1 lakh people per month should visit. It will take
Okay.
some time. Ayodhya is a small city, but I'm sure policymakers are keeping this in mind to ensure that the best experience for those visiting will be ensured. You will see this infrastructure wise, you will see this experiential wise. And last but not the least, you will see it in how global communities, like we said about South Korea, I don't know if that point came up. The former president's wife had been to South Korea because one of their communities traced their ancestry to Ayodhya, Princess Suriratna. So we look at a lot of international visitors from various countries coming to such spiritual sites. So I'm sure policymakers will keep that in mind, and onwards and upwards it is for Ayodhya from here.
Interesting. And let me recall a personal incident in my life. 50 days after the demolition of the mosque, 30th January, I went to Ayodhya and I saw that tent which has just come up.
Yeah.
It was in pathetic state.
Yeah.
And in those days, personal cameras used to be fairly big. And I requested the inspector on duty, can I do some filming here? There was a little, bada sort of thing, iron की grill बना दी गई थी इसमें कोई मुश्किल से एक आदमी चल सकता था साथ में. So from the opposite side, first he said no, but then suddenly he yielded and he said, okay, go ahead and do it. So I filmed, and in that dhakka mukki, because the crowd was coming from the opposite.
Journalists were always looked at spectacally.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. But somehow this man was he's just suddenly turned his earlier stand upside down and he said, go and do it quickly. 1 minute 45 seconds I managed to film. Ram Lala, you could hardly see them. And there were gunmen, the policemen with the rifles, with the heavy arms and standing as if they're guarding a criminal. And so it was such a pathetic situation. And seeing this great revival is I think, is a huge moment of fulfillment for me. Where do we go from here? My last question is Kashi and Mathura next?
Guru Prakash, sir.
No, like I said, and in the course of our presentation also, Vijayji, it was very categorically mentioned that judicial process is something that for which we have a great amount of respect, and definitely as a democracy, as a nation of 1.4 billion people with strong faith in the institutions of democracy and the institution of judicial process, I think we'll let the judiciary take its own course. Our commitment definitely is there, but that has to be done within the four walls of constitution. That has to be done respecting the rule of law, and that is something which is, जैसे कि हम लोग कहते हैं कि भविष्य के गर्भ में है. अभी उस पर कुछ भी टिप्पणी करना, it's not appropriate for us to comment on it right now. But definitely, it's a very core cultural and civilizational issue. But at the right time, I think it will be addressed by including all the stakeholders.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Although Ram,
So, Madhuresh, we can
Ram
take some
teaches
questions.
us to
Yeah, finish.
Ram teaches us to live in the present. So at this point in time, Jan 22nd is crucial.
You're right. Okay, no, I take the point. Yeah, it's fair enough. And Madhuresh, can we open for some questions? Open the discourse.
Yes, everyone. Can you just switch on your video and unmute yourself, please? Yeah, if you can unmute and ask your question, Shraddha.
Thank you. Namaste to Guru Prakash ji and Sudarshan ji. Thank you for such an excellent presentation and a very enlightening talk. My question to you is that Bhagwan Ram ruled Ayodhya for thousands of years in complete peace and prosperity, and that golden period was called the Ram Rajya. So, should we as Indians just revere and be content with our ancient glorious past, or what do you think should be the way forward?
Sudarshan ji, you will like to go ahead?
Not at all. I think, like we said in our presentation, we take inspiration from how he governed, how he ensured economic development. And I'll just give you an example. If you look at the Prime Minister today, he's visiting various states in South India. He's visiting prominent Ram temples in South India. At the same time, he's inaugurating some key projects related to some essential policies in all of these states. That shows where India will marry tradition and contemporary dynamics to move the country ahead. It's a daunting task that he has, from the Red Forts, like Guru was saying, from various podiums, he has said we need to move towards a developed India. There are certain targets that our policymakers have. And at the end of the day, like in our constitution, we the people, we can't really always be dependent on the government. Governments can nudge us. It's we the people who will have to take this country forward, and that's why this vision of 2047 is ahead of us. And I'm sure that we will take the important lessons from history, but suit it to present and transform. Is my view. If Guru wants to add.
No, I think by and large, Shwetaji, obviously it's very important for us to turn the searchlight inwards and take both glory and lessons from the past. And as far as we are concerned now, there is absolutely not to say that there are no challenges today. There are challenges, but there is a system in place. There is a vision in place. There is a man with a mission. There is an organization that is committed to see India develop. And you can see that the data speaks for itself in terms of infrastructure, in terms of innovation, in terms of unicorns, in terms of inclusion, in terms of representation, in terms of diversity. Huge strides have been made. But having said that, there is a huge task for us, for our generation, to ensure that no one is left behind when we march towards becoming the influential economies of the world, which is sustainable, which is inclusive, which is representative, and which is diverse.
I was also looking at some data points yesterday. If you look at business-owned entrepreneurs, nascent entrepreneurs, startups, these are all at an all-time high. And markets too sort of exemplify this as to how India is the place to be. So people are aware how the onus is on them to move this country forward, and Ram will help in that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Guru Prakash ji and Sudarshan ji.
Any more questions? Madhresh, I can't see.
Yeah, Guruji has to go as well, and we have covered almost 1 hour 15 minutes, and he kindly agreed to stay. So we can move to the thanks note if that's okay, Vijayji.
Yes, yes. I think it's time to say thanks to our great speakers today. Thank you. Yeah.
This will quickly, yeah.
You may invite Madhuresh to say thanks to the guests.
Thank you so much, Vijayji. I think Guruji and Sudarshanji have said everything. So मैं राम पर बोलूं हिम्मत नहीं है कुछ गुरुजी और सुदर्शन जी ने कह दिया सब कुछ लेट मी स्टार्ट विद दैट but sincere gratitude and thanks to both of you. I know very well that how much busy you were there, and a brilliant enlightening session on the Rama Mandir setting Indian civilization history. Especially that PPT, it's very useful, and I hope it should be okay, Sudarshan ji. Many people asking to share that. So, yeah, absolutely. So we will share that, and especially your insights and knowledge shared during this discussion were truly eye-opening and provided a deeper understanding of the historical and cultural significance of the Ram Mandir. Especially few things like Ram, दीपक जलाते नहीं दीपक की श्रृंखला में है, means he is for Vanchit, he is for Vistapit, and that's another narrative we are facing. So I think it was a great session and would love to connect with both of you after 22nd, and we'll have probably the another session. Just would like to thanks everyone. I think within 24 hours we planned this session and executed. So whoever have joined, the audience, 22, 23 people here, and then on the YouTube, the sincere thanks to everyone from the FISI team. And we look forward to attending more sessions and learning from your expertise in the future, Guru Prakash ji and Sudarshan ji. Thanks everyone. Thank you so much.